We just picked up our Azure Standard order today, which, by the way, I need a drink of water. Look at my water. You might go, oh, gross. Why is your water brown? Because it's basically tea, cold tea. So if you do a cold infusion and you forget about it and let it sit in the refrigerator for 3 days instead of just 24 hours, this is just mojito mint and borage. Tastes really good, though. Feels good on my sore throat. My vocal cords have just been so sore lately. So anyway, for whatever reason, the Azure Standard drop was this morning rather than this evening. And one of the things I got, I think I've tried these before, a smaller batch. They're definitely more expensive than the regular cranberries, but this doesn't have added sugar like the other ones do. It just has the apple juice to sweeten it. And oh my goodness, these are the best. They're organic, apple-infused dried cranberries. Oh my goodness. And then I decided to try, since I got that big, massive bottle of their citrus dish soap and I really like it, I thought I'm going to go ahead and try the smallest bottle of the lavender. So this is a 16 ounce. And it smells really good. I'm always afraid to try lavender because sometimes I don't like the way some places... smells wonderful. I don't like the way some places make their lavender smell. This smells like lavender essential oil would smell. And then for fun, I decided to try these organic pretzel crisps. They're good. They're really good. That works better for using as a dip, for dip or spreading, putting cheese on it or something than just like regular pretzels. I decided to try their peanut butter. This was exciting. I'll now explain why. So I got one holding it wrong. I got one crunchy. Patrick tends to prefer crunchy. I tend to prefer creamy, but I'll eat either one. I recommend the crunchy because the creamy is really, it's definitely more runny. This would be perfect for putting on ice cream. It's not that runny, but I like peanut butter ice cream every now and then. This would blend well. And then the crunchy, it's got a lot of peanuts in it, but they're not bigger pieces. They're kind of smaller, but it's a little thicker as a result. But here's what's cool. I noticed is that these are also the Azure Standard canning jars. It's a better price than what I was paying for the organic peanut butter in plastic jars. These are glass and they're the actual canning jars. So the regular mouth pint size canning jars. So I got a couple more Azure Standard canning jars. So if you buy any of their products that's sold in a glass jar, they pack it into their own canning jars, which is so cool because, you're making the most out of your money. Not that you can't reuse other jars. As you know, I do that all the time. But it's always nice when they're the standard canning jars. And the Azure Standard canning jars. Azure Standard canning jars. So, then I know I can use them for canning as well as vacuum sealing stuff in them if I want to. And then I want to share with you something funny that happened the other day. So some of you know that it's usually people from the UK, and this is absolutely no offense towards any of my UK friends or anyone who lives in a place where herb is pronounced with the hard H. The H isn't silent. I have no problem with that. Absolutely not one bit of problem. That's how they pronounce it. They pronounce it herb. Nothing against that because we're all going to come from different dialects. Even here in the United States, we have different ways of pronouncing things depending on whether we're from the north or the south or the east or the west or the Midwest or whatever. And that's the way, it's that way in other countries too. But the history lesson about the word H-E-R-B, you look at the etymology, it comes from the Old French, E-R-B-E. That's where it came from. Now, in the modern French, they have since added the H, so it's H-E-R-B-E, but they still don't pronounce the H. It's still a silent H. So, if you want to be really technical, herb is the more proper way to pronounce it, but I'm not going to beat anybody over the head with it like people like to do with me frequently. I've had people cuss at me for not pronouncing the H. Well, So there's the history lesson and where it comes from. However you want to pronounce it, I don't really care. But it's really annoying when people want to lord over it. I had somebody a while back say, people who aren't English shouldn't be teaching English. In other words, because I'm not from the UK, I'm not from England, so I shouldn't be teaching English. Well, here's something for you. Herb is not an English word to begin with. So there. Yeah, herb is short for Herbert. Exactly. See, here in the States at least, herb is a person. But so here's the funny story I wanted to share. Is that so this guy, it ended up being funnier as it went along. First, I thought the guy was just being a jerk, which he kind of was, because people get a little bit out of shape when they hear you pronounce something wrong, what they think is wrong. So he said, that word is pronounced with a hard H. You know why? Because there's an H in it. So I explained to him what I just explained to you guys about. I said, well, if you're from the UK, that would be proper to pronounce it with a hard H. I said, but here in America, the H is silent. Now, there are a lot of people in the States that pronounce the H, probably because they hear a lot of people from the UK or other places where the H is pronounced. No big deal. Again, I don't care. So I gave him the history of that. And then I told him, I was actually pretty polite. I said, other forms, other words with a silent H are hour, air as in HEIR. Okay. Honest. Just here's an example of some other words that have a silent H. And some people don't pronounce the H in humble. Here we say the H in humble, but I know there's places, the Southeast area, that pronounce it humble. Again, I don't care. I think it's cool. Everybody is unique. I know what they mean. It's like, did you understand? Did you understand what I meant? Then why are you whining? Well, here's where it gets funny. So I tell him that, and then he comes back and says, yeah, they're all hard H's. And I'm like, oh, come on. So I said, are you seriously telling me you pronounce the H in honest and hour and air? So it's honest, hour, and hair. And when he replied, this made me laugh. And I realized this guy was actually pretty cool. He might have been a little annoyed at first. He said, well, he said, I heard that word pronounced that way, meaning herb, from a chef. And so I've been saying it that way ever since. And I just didn't want to admit defeat. And then he put a laughing face. He said, after your explanation, I didn't want to admit defeat. And he put a laughing face. And I laughed. It was great. I said, that was a good one. So I was so glad that somebody who initially might have been a little annoyed, he came in and he was actually pretty cool and he had a good sense of humor. I love that. I love it. It's always great. But, and he wouldn't know that I'm constantly dealing with people that want to correct me on how I pronounce words, especially the word herb. That's the one I get the most. But that's how I was taught growing up. Oh, Google says the crowns are for a rating system. Huh. I don't really like it. I'm sure the people who get a number one like it, but it's just kind of like the whole members only thing on YouTube and anywhere else. I don't like things that make other people feel like they're less than because they're not a member or they don't have a number one next to their name. Who cares? You're all number one in my book. Everybody gets a prize. Everybody gets a crown. You're here, you get a crown. That's how I see it. If you're not here, you don't get one. Duh. Cool, because being number two sucks. Oh my goodness, you guys are cracking me up. Oh, I'm getting tears in my eyes. What do you do with all the eggshells? That tends to go back into the chicken scratch, or I use it for myself as a mineral supplement. Those are the two main ways I use eggshells. I don't really use them in the garden because I feel like my chickens and me need them more than my garden does. One thing I found though is that diatomaceous earth, I've kind of stopped doing the eggshells for a while. I've switched to diatomaceous earth. I need to double check because I can't remember, but it should be pretty high in those same minerals, considering it's fossilized plankton. It should be pretty high in calcium, magnesium, and some of the other similar types of minerals that I need. But I'm finding that just doing the diatomaceous earth, and not doing the eggshell supplement, my teeth are still looking good. When I stop doing any of that, then my teeth will start to turn gray, and I know I'm not getting enough minerals. So I might be getting enough from the diatomaceous earth. Diatomaceous earth is also a good option because it will help feed the soil as well as keep certain pests, bugs, insects. Some people say it works for slugs. Not here. I don't use it for that around here because it just too quickly gets washed into the soil, which is fine for the minerals. But anyway, so I do like giving the eggshells back to the chickens. Wood ash. Yep, wood ash is good too. One thing I found though with wood ash, because I tend to put it in my gardens a lot, usually around perennials. I will no longer be, I'm going to be a lot more careful about how I use it because I'm suspicious it was the wood ash that killed my oregano. I might have had it on there too thick. And wood ash can kind of, when it rains, it kind of turn to concrete. And I think what it did is it basically suffocated my my oregano. But it's coming back slowly, but it is coming back, thankfully. Oh, by the way, I do have a chicken in the solar oven, even though it's kind of half sunny, half cloudy. And I had that video come out on using a solar oven. I believe I said that if I start something in the solar oven, just go ahead and put it in early in the day, even if I'm unsure if it's going to be clear or not. When you live here, you're never sure. It can be completely as clear of a sky as you've ever seen. And in 5 minutes, all of a sudden, it's solid clouds. You never know. But I just put stuff in the solar oven early in the day. And if it gets closer to dinner time, it's like maybe an hour or two before dinner time, I go and check and see if it's cooked, if the weather's kind of sketchy. And if it's not, then I just stick it in the toaster oven and let it finish cooking in there. No big deal. If nothing else, at least I'll cut some of the electric cooking time off of it. But my toaster oven is plugged into solar power anyway. So I'm still using solar. The only difference is now I'm putting a little more wear and tear on my toaster oven. So that's something else to think too, is even if you have solar power to run your electric things, every time you run something, you're putting wear and tear on it. So if you can do something like in a solar oven that doesn't have any moving parts, you're not really getting that same wear and tear. Somebody made a comment under there about, making sure your oven's hot enough. Yeah, you know what? It doesn't matter if it's a homemade one or not. Your weather's going to have a lot of say in how much sun you're getting on if it's going to get hot enough anyway. So I used to use mine came with a little thermometer, and I never use it because I just put the stuff in early. And again, if it's not done by the end of the day, I can put it in the toaster oven or the big oven. But usually it'd be, if it fits in my solar oven, it's going to fit in my toaster oven. I'm sorry, I keep saying I got to go, but the work ethic thing of the young, when I say the young, I'm talking teenagers through people in their 30s. So my boys were old enough to start working out, getting hired at jobs, real jobs. They're not their other jobs. Doing yard work for people weren't real jobs, but you know what I mean. Especially my youngest son, the kind of jobs that he's done, constantly having to deal with coworkers that have no work ethic whatsoever. Constant turnover because they're so lazy. They either get fired or they quit because it's just too much work having to work. And so Justin's constantly picking up the slack all the time. It seems like every time they hire someone, Every now and then they'll get someone else as a good worker, but most of the time what they get somebody in there that just has no desire to work. It's like Justin's even asked him, why are you here? Why are you here if you don't want to work? And there was one guy who was like, oh man, I need money. He's constantly wanting to borrow money because he has a wife and kids and, oh, I'm so broke. And Justin's like, well, then maybe you should work, because he's always finding excuses not to work. Always calling in sick. Now there's a guy that he just always has somebody. You can't believe this is true. It's like every week somebody in his family is dying, so he can't come to work. Like, and I'm not joking when I say that. Oh, I just lost this relative and that relative and that. Like every week it's somebody dying. There's not pretty soon he's going to run out of family to make that excuse for. Then what's he going to do? What kind of excuse is he going to use then? It's like, it's just, to me, it shouldn't be surprising, but it still sometimes blows me away. And these people keep hiring people like that because they're like, we have to have workers of some kind. We really want good workers, but they got to hire whoever's willing to apply for the job. And they just keep going through them, because it's hard work. And people realize it's actual work, and so they don't want to do it. And so they just don't show up to work. A lot of people don't even bother to show up or call in and give an excuse. They just don't show up. I used to see this in the last several years of teaching dance. I'd see the same thing. It was one of the reasons why I said, you know what, I'm kind of done. Because when I first started teaching, I could rely on my students being there. Yeah, there would be somebody that might be sick on a rare occasion, but it was rare. But as the years went by, the last several years just got really bad. It's like you just never knew. They might decide they don't want to be in the show at the last minute and not come, and nobody bothers to say anything to you. So it's not just the kids, it's definitely coming from the parents. The example the parents are setting, as well as what the parents are willing to allow their child to get away with. So instead of teaching them, okay, you've decided this, this sport, this dance, this whatever, this activity isn't for you, but right now you've made a commitment to see this through. So you need to finish it out, then you can quit. That I would totally understand. Or if it's right at the beginning of the year, they try a couple classes, decide it's not for them. That I can understand. Though really you should give it more than a couple classes to find out for sure. But when it gets down to the last minute and you're depending on them to be in the show, you've choreographed all these dances for that child, every student, to have a specific place in the show. And when they don't bother to show up, and nobody tells you anything, it is extremely frustrating. So I would say I can at least relate a little bit to how a lot of these employers must feel when they have workers that are this way. I have no patience for that kind of attitude. I just don't. That is definitely one of my weak points, is my lack of patience for rudeness and for utter laziness. I mean, we're all going to have days and times where it's okay to be a little bit lazy, or it's just like, you know what, I'm exhausted. But if you have no desire to push ahead and do anything to better yourself or your situation, don't complain to other people and feel everybody owes you something because you're not willing to put in the effort. I mean, everyone doesn't get a trophy or a crown. Nope. Sorry, Tammy. You're just always going to be number 2. You still got a crown, though. Hey.